What was really eye-opening to me is that the United Nations has said that soil is finite. They have declared soil finite and predicts catastrophic loss in 60 years. That is, maybe it's within my lifetime. I would be 117, but it's definitely within my daughter's lifetime. Regenerative agriculture therefore implies more than just sustaining something, but rather an active rebuilding or regeneration of existing systems toward full health. It also implies an open ended process of ongoing improvement and positive transformation.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Healthy Habit Podcast. We're on episode number 117 here, 117, with Monique Wellise here today. We're going to be discussing all things regenerative agriculture. I'm excited for this one here, and natural factors for our monthly check-in with natural factors. Monique Wellise has been a passionate sales and education leader in the natural products industry for over 2 decades. Her background includes training at the American School of Herbalism, extensive work with the integrative medical community, and alliances with some of the industry's most well-reputed brands. Her work in the health, retail, and professional channels has been an inspiration to her in terms of the positive impact nutrition can have on health and humanity. Monique currently serves as the National Sales Manager for Natural Factors, the U.S. division, and she's over in Northern California here with us today. Monique, thanks for joining us here on the podcast.
My pleasure. Thank you.
How are we doing today on your end?
Great. And as you were reading that bio, I was thinking that I needed to add that I'm now passionate about the impact soil can have on
Oh,
humanity as well, because I've been immersing myself in soil studies, which is part of what we're talking about today.
interesting. Well, let's quickly highlight that since that's we're gonna have that in your next bio there when I introduce you. But
I think so.
what does that entail exactly, and why are you passionate about that?
We have we'll talk about the farm perhaps a little later, but Natural
Yeah.
Factors has a gorgeous farm up in British Columbia in the Okanagan Valley. And I looked at the farm from the perspective it's over 1,000 acres of the health of the soil, because you walk on that soil and it's spongy and it's 6 to 10 feet, 15 feet I should say, in places. And the perspective I looked at it was from what that was doing for the crops that we were growing there, because the soil is so nutrient rich. But more recently, I've become largely interested in, largely due to the films Kiss the Ground and Common Ground, in the solution that what is beneath our feet holds for humanity, and actually as a solution to the climate crisis. And as I delved into the subject more and started looking at regenerative farming, you can Google it and all
Yeah.
kinds of things come up. What I learned is that we are in a pretty bleak soil crisis. Um, Around the world, but in particular, U.S. soils are heavily degraded. Degraded soils are very fragile. When those degraded soils are hit by wind, they very easily erode. And when they're hit by rain, they very easily flood. And that flooding is crippling to farmers. Um, we lose, on average, 4 tons of topsoil per acre a year to water and wind erosion. That's like 4 truckloads full of soil per single acre. So, degraded soil also means less water is absorbed, which leads to dried out landscapes. Those dried out landscapes are fueling the wildfire problem that we've been having in the last 10 years. So this dramatic loss of topsoil is greatly contributing to the climate crisis. It's not all about the carbon that is going into the atmosphere. And what was really eye-opening to me is that the United Nations has said that soil is finite. They have declared soil finite and predicts catastrophic loss in 60 years. That is, maybe it's within my lifetime. I would be 117, but it's definitely within my daughter's lifetime. And so if we don't reverse the trajectory and get busy about it, we're going to be in big trouble with respect to food supply and water supply and all of it. I mean, it will be economic collapse. So we have to get busy.
First time I've heard someone use that. I'm going to quote that. We'll trim that clip up for the beginning of the intro to this video. That soil's a finite resource. That's fascinating. Yeah. So, and most people aren't thinking about that. It's just so behind the
Mm-mm.
scenes, right? Unless you're in the industry and
It's
researching it.
true. It's true. But I think some of these films that have come in recent 5, 6 years,
Right.
there is a regenerative movement, and I'm hoping that I can generate some excitement with the audience here to start researching regenerative farming and the soil crisis to learn what you can do at home.
Do you
But
have any? Do you have any of those titles off the top of your head? Some of those movies, if people want to
yes, I do.
go ahead.
Kiss the Ground was the first,
Okay.
and one that is actually in theaters now is called Common Ground. It's fantastic. I know that they're going to be doing a special showing on Earth Day, which is April 22nd, a longer length special edition. But you can just Google Common Ground and it will come right up and you can see which cities it's playing in. Now, Kiss
Got it.
the Ground, which was the first, you can find that on Netflix, so that's really easy to watch.
Thank you, Monique. Beautiful. Well, thanks for that intro. I can see why you're passionate on such an important topic. Makes sense.
Yeah, kind of a big
Regenerative,
deal.
yeah. Earth Day's coming up, folks. Monday, April 22nd. This interview is being recorded on April 11th, so this probably will come out right there around Earth Day.
Oh,
This
nice.
final release of this episode. So it's a great month and time to talk about regenerative farming, what these practices do for the health of the soil, as Monique just covered, and the importance of healthy soil to the health of our planet and future generations. So, how did we get here? Let's take a step back, like in
Yeah,
the first place, because then that helps us to not repeat the same mistakes going forward, right?
yeah. It's been going on a long, long,
Yeah.
long time, but the industrial age kind of put things on fast forward. But when you think about even 10,000 years back in most places where humans practiced agricultural, landscape function was going down: overgrazing, deforestation, tilling, all before the advent of major machinery and chemicals were introduced. And when that was introduced in the last century, things really started going haywire. And there are some cultures that did work with the land in ways that increased land function and carrying capacity. Most cultures did cause some form of degeneration. So then populations increase, and as populations increase and our population's exploding, the stress on the land continued to lead us to where we are today. In the last 40 years, a third of the farmable land has been lost. And every year, 30 million acres, the size of England, is lost to degradation. And most ranching, the way it is practiced, destroys the soil and the soil building process.
Yeah, and that's basically like the lifeblood almost, if you want to look at it, for the whole farming process and agriculture.
Yep. Hence the risk of a food crisis in 60 years if we don't reverse the trajectory.
Well, there we go. This is an important one here, folks. Monique Wellise breaking it down here, episode number 117. But of course, we have solutions too. We're not just going to leave it there, right? So, very interesting stuff. What is regenerative farming exactly then, and how is it part of the solution?
um, it's so exciting because as I started learning more about this, it's pretty dire, but there is hope. And regenerative farming practices can actually turn things around pretty quickly. I want to read a quote
Yeah.
from Dr. Charles Massey, who is an Australian based farmer, scientist, and author. This quote summarizes what regenerative agriculture is. Regenerative agriculture, therefore, implies more than just sustaining something, but rather an active rebuilding or regeneration of existing systems toward full health. It also implies an open ended process of ongoing improvement and positive transformations. So it is based on principles, certain set of principles, and anyone can do it. You can actually do it in your backyard,
Okay.
in your raised beds. Many of the practices like cover cropping, no-till, planned grazing. You're probably not going to do planned grazing in your backyard, but reduced or completely eliminated chemicals are already being implemented by farmers across the country to really great results. There are many regenerative farmers that are putting over 3 tons of carbon per acre per year into their soil. And we haven't talked about the carbon thing yet, but that's another really exciting piece about regenerative farming practices and healthy soil, because healthy soil pulls carbon out of the atmosphere. The soil needs carbon, and it's a solution to drawing down carbon from our atmosphere where it is overabundant into a place where it can do some good.
And how long has Natural Factors been involved with the whole Earth Day event? And has this been many years?
I don't, we're not very active on social media. So I think other companies, have if that might have a farm like we had would probably blast it out a lot more, but we kind of quietly do the right thing in the background at Natural Factors. But the farm has been owned by Natural Factors for over 30 years, and it is not land that needed to be regenerated. It was land that was pristine and is being kept pristine through practices that are well aligned with regenerative farming.
So yeah, Natural Factors, they have their own farmland there in British Columbia, correct? Let's dive a little bit into that. It's beautiful. Never been there yet, but I've only heard
Oh, it's so
amazing things.
pretty. It's magical. Yes, it's over 1,000 acres, and it is in the Okanagan Valley in British Columbia. And it's unique because it's nestled between two lakes. And in every year, as it has for millennia, that valley floods. And when it floods, it brings rich organic matter. And it is this annual flooding that just brings so much goodness to the soil. And like when you walk on it, you kind of bounce. So the soil is like 6 to even 15 feet in places. So I can talk about what we do at the farm, and through that I can illustrate some of the common regenerative farming practices.
Yes.
I will say that regenerative farming, unlike organic, which has a checklist of what you need to do to be organic, there's a number of different certifying bodies for regenerative agriculture, but there isn't, one alignment yet. There's
Right.
a few organizations, but it's kind of out there. But there's some things that are um, just common throughout all of them, and that would be low or no till is an important one. So tilling disrupts the delicate universe that lies beneath our feet. There's a pretty sophisticated and critical system going on in the soil, and nature, and we've talked about carbon, is designed to create a net carbon gain in the soil. If it isn't, soil would constantly be degenerating. So soil needs the carbon, and healthy soil will take carbon out of our atmosphere. So when you till it, you disrupt that ability for the soil to draw down. Cover crops are really important. Let the land rest. Don't just plant the same thing year after year
Right.
after year. It's going to drain the soil of its nutrients. So let the land rest, and then plant cover crops that are going to put the right nutrients back in the soil. Biodiversity, having a large number of crops rather than just one, is going to be important. Windbreaks are a big deal, like having trees around the property that will protect the soil from wind if there are big wind events.
Interesting.
Composting is really important. Compost can be a regenerative probiotic to the soil. That's certainly something that we can do in our backyards, and then no or reduce chemicals. Now, at Factors Farms, it's zero chemicals. We don't even use or any pesticides whatsoever, not even organic ones. On Factors Farms, we have if there's a natural wildlife corridor, so there's no fences. So
Wow.
wildlife roams, tramples things down a little bit, poops. The poop is really good. In the poop, not only do they fertilize the soil, but they're also dropping little seedlings. So, wildlife exposure is really important. But on the pest control piece, there's seven ponds on the property, and every spring, like the earth is absolutely moving with millions of little tiny froglets, and they're the major pest control team, in addition to dragonflies and ladybugs and such. So I don't think I caught most of the major practices that we're doing, but a lot of those that I've described there are regenerative farming practices. One that although we have some draft horses. Uh, one that we don't necessarily do on our farm is planned grazing, and that is a big deal for the regenerative farming movement and a big deal to regenerating the land. So if you take cattle, and most cattle in their lifetime will spend some of their lifetime grazing, even if they're not grass fed, they just do. And so if they keep grazing the same piece of land over and over and over again, that's just going to become kind of desertified and there's not going to be much left there.
Yeah.
But if they hang out and they graze in a certain quadrant and you do some planned grazing, and after a period of time you leave that alone, they've grazed, they've packed things down, moved things up, they've pooped, the rain comes and then that can grow up and get healthy, then you move them to another quadrant where they do their stuff and you just keep rotating them around. And that practice is a big cornerstone to regenerative farming on a larger scale. And if you watch the movie Common Ground, you will see an example of a farmer in Mexico that took some land that looked like desert, and in a few years' time, it was lush and full of life again.
Fascinating. You guys should make a documentary there at Natural Factors for your farm.
It would be
I'd go
it would
watch
be
that.
nice. Yeah, we would be nice.
That would be really cool. And a high percentage of the products are straight from the farm there in British Columbia, right? Those 1,000 acres, like for example, the echinacea tincture and many
Yeah.
products from Natural Factors are actually coming from the farm, correct?
Yep, it is. The echinacea, like our straight echinacea product or our anti-V product, I mean, that is gorgeous when you enter the farm. There's just acres and acres of gorgeous purple cone flowers. And the echinacea is actually uh, gone through phase two clinical trials in terms of its medicinal properties. So I know we're talking more about farming today. The other product line that has a lot of material from our farm is the Whole Earth and Sea product
Right.
line. So the Whole Earth and Sea multivitamin tablets, in the section that says Farm Fresh Factors, most of that material is coming straight from our farm, and that's also true of our Whole Earth and Sea powders.
What types of crops are we growing there at the farm besides the echinacea?
Well, there are quite a few, and naturally we rotate them because that's part of regenerative practices. But big ones are kale, alfalfa, spearmint, cilantro, oregano, peppers, parsley, beets, barley, dandelion, broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, basil. But in
Wow.
addition to the crops that are grown for the products, we also allocate a lot of the acreage to uh, true species seeds, endangered seeds. So there are some varieties of true species seeds that were thought to be extinct. And some of the researchers that work with us have, found a seed, and now we have fields, and we share that with seed banks across the world to preserve true species non-hybridic seeds.
Fascinating. Folks, if you're just tuning in, we got Monique Wellise here representing Natural Factors. We're talking all things Earth Day here and regenerative farming for episode number 117 here. Earth Day is coming up, folks. A couple weeks from today's recording. And Natural Factors is walking the talk here, right, Monique? You're just
We
talking
are.
straight from what you guys are actually doing here, from
Yep.
the carbon sequestration. Say that word for me.
Sequestration.
Sequestration,
Sequestration. Yeah.
and the plants cooling the planet, improving drought resistance, restoring habitat for pollinators. All these different things are being practiced right there in British Columbia at Natural Factors Farm, right?
It is. In fact, we have an apiary as well. That's the only place on the farm that you will find a fence, and that's to keep the bears out of the honey.
Okay.
But pollinator research is also something we do, and something I didn't mention because I wanted to just talk about the regenerative practices
Yeah.
that we were employing is that natural factors kind of goes above and beyond that, and we're testing the soil also to ensure it is optimal before we're planting crops. And every single crop that we plant on Factors Farms is propagated in our own greenhouses to ensure that it is true species, non-hybridic.
Amazing. Very, very interesting stuff. So, what fueled your initial passion with this? How did you start getting into kind of this side of the natural products industry? You started it from the beginning, but tell us a little bit about that so that we get a little bit more information there.
You mean the soil side of it?
Yeah, or just
I'm
all of the regenerative agriculture and that whole part
Oh,
of it.
it's just so exciting. This is pretty new for me. I've been with the company for 7 years,
Yeah.
and like I said, I've known that we have employed regenerative farming practices, but the light bulb came on for me when I um, watched those films and started doing research on the soil crisis. It was, and it's a total light bulb. Like, oh my God, this is the solution because don't we I think many of us feel a sense of hopelessness with the trajectory of our climate, and this is something that we can control. We can raise awareness. It's also really good for the farmers. It can offer hope to the farmers, which is a really tough business. And I was doing a little bit of research into the Soil Health Academy, and I want to read a bit by Dr. Alan Williams, who is a sixth-generation family farmer and a founding partner of Grass-Fed Insights.
Yeah.
So he has a business that consults with farmers to help them go the regenerative direction. So more than he consults with more than 4,000 farmers and ranchers in U.S., Canada, Mexico, and South America, ranging from over just a little few acres, like a little tiny family farm, to a million acres.
Wow.
So he said that this movement is not just about the earth, it's also about hope that family farmers uh, can have a real opportunity to stay on the family farm
Yeah.
or return to it if they've gotten out of it. And actually, in farming, it is one of the highest suicide rate professions
Wow.
because it is expensive and it is devastating, and your land is disappearing right before your eyes. So it really offers hope. And so if they can have a better quality of life and they see some hope, there will be more, I think, incentive and motivation on the part of farmers to go in this direction. But one of the farms that he worked with saved over $200,000 in their second year by
Wow.
reducing input costs such as seed, pesticides, herbicides, and fungicides. They reduced by year two their use of glyphosate by 80%, and by year three, the use of it was gone altogether. So you can spend a lot less on chemicals. You're going to get more productive crops. You're going to lose loss to flooding and erosion. So it's a pretty exciting direction that really is kind of happening. The movement's happening on a big scale. Something we can also do is get involved in any legislation that comes up with respect to farming.
Uh-huh.
You can also follow Kiss the Ground on LinkedIn if you're on LinkedIn, and you'll get great notifications as well and information on what you can do to help there.
Thank you so much, Monique, for breaking all this down. This is extremely important, right? And everyone's trying to make the world better, but this is a direct way people can actually get involved, right? So, and thanks for the practical tips.
Yep.
Folks, you can even visit soilhealthinstitute.com, soil, S-O-I-L, Health Institute, all one word,
Yep.
where on Earth Day, April 22nd, Common Ground will have an extended Earth Day edition in over 75 cities. So you can view that right there at their website, get all the information. Kiss the Ground, Common Ground, these are important movies that can help you folks get started. And again, the Whole Earth and Sea, if you haven't yet checked it out, at least every day someone's coming in looking for a multivitamin slash multi-mineral product here at Healthy Habit. Whole Earth and Sea offers a really solid multivitamin that we've used clinically as well with patients of ours. I've used the men's multivitamin
Yep.
several times. I've gone through a couple bottles of those. And again, most of those ingredients are coming straight from that Natural Factors farm, correct?
Yep. They are in the farm fresh factors. The majority of them, I would say 80% plus, are coming from the farms, and the potencies in those vitamins are so significant.
Yes.
And the levels of B vitamins, I'm sure if you've taken them for a couple of months or 4 months or whatever, you found them very energizing. Yeah,
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's like food.
yeah,
You know, you
it is.
literally, as you're having your meal, you can have one or two tablets of that with your meal just to
Yeah,
really round out that nutrition. It's not a meal replacement though, but
no, no, no,
it
no
helps.
protein, no protein, no carbohydrates, no fats, but
Right.
plenty of micronutrients. But when you break them apart, and you smell them, they really smell like produce, don't they?
It's like you're in British Columbia.
Oh.
Not quite though, huh?
Uh, sorry, I had my personal phone going. Yes, it is. It smells just like the
Like
farm
we're
in
at the
Canada.
farm.
Yeah, it kind of does.
Well, Monique, what's a good recap then here for our listeners? We could talk for many hours about this topic here on regenerative farming, but and I want to have you on again here before the end of 2024. So let's get our listeners a good recap here from today's interview.
Okay, so the soil beneath our feet is offers hope for humanity.
Mhm.
And if we don't do so on a big scale, the consequences are pretty great. So get excited about it, raise awareness, tell your neighbors, tell your friends. Watch the movies. You will be inspired, and do what you can in your backyard. Stop using glyphosate altogether. There's no need for it. It degrades the soil, and it's a known carcinogen. And take a multivitamin every day, and a whole earth and sea multivitamin. It's the best way to round out any gaps that there may be in the diet. And I think pretty much all diets have gaps, even if they're
Right.
healthy ones.
Absolutely, Monique, couldn't agree more. And again, I want to have you on again soon. We'll see what we can organize there with Chanthi and the whole team. We
Sounds
appreciate you
good.
all. Thanks for coming on for episode 117, Monique.
Okay. Well, happy Earth Day, everyone.